Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Employee to Boss podcast. I am your host, Hayleigh Hayhurst, the owner of Espresso Podcast Production, a full-service podcasting agency specializing in editing, marketing, and strategy. And today I have a great guest. Her name is Jenesis Rose, and she helps new entrepreneurs with a history of people-pleasing reclaim their power and courageously pursue their dreams of starting and coaching business that helps them shine. She believes that you know yourself best, and it can be so hard to see and accept all of your self-knowledge. Jenesis is on a mission to help you align what you do with who you truly are, so that you can have more fun selling your coaching programs online, make a bigger impact on the world, and reach your biggest career goals, because she believes that the world is a better place for all of us when you do work that you love. I absolutely love this episode because she tells a story of her journey from employee to boss, which was not linear, and it's not linear for a lot of people, so I love the transparency that she shares there. She also talks about how you can get clarity before you even have your first paid client, and how slowing down is sometimes the best way to be able to speed up your success, which is something that I wish I learned early on in my entrepreneurial journey. Her signature program is called Passions to Paychecks, where she does help people start their coaching programs. And she also has a podcast called Sustain Your Passion, as well as a journal also under that same title. So all of her links will be in the show notes to her Instagram, her podcast, and the journal. And I hope that if you have any questions or you're newer in your coaching journey, that you feel comfortable to reach out to either Jenesis or I. Both of our links are in the show notes, and we would love to have a conversation with you about how you can feel the most successful when you are just starting out. This podcast has that whole mission of making you feel successful and confident to take that step to starting your business or taking it to the next level or growing it. I have had over 100 conversations with business owners who have done just that and are sharing their tips. So I hope that you go back and listen to other episodes that may resonate with you. All right, let's get right into this episode with Jenesis Rose. Hey, Jenesis, thank you so much for joining me on the Employee to Boss podcast. I am so excited to talk to you today.
Thanks so much for having me. Likewise, I can't wait for this conversation.
Yeah, so you work with a lot of new coaches, which is exactly who's listening to this podcast. So I would love it if you could share your story from employee to boss and how you got to where you are and what you do now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for making this space. There's not that many resources out there for new coaches, like never made a sale type coaches. So it's just so great to be able to share my story and know that it's going to hopefully impact folks that I care most deeply about, because that new experience, all of the identity shifts, all of the questions, all the panic and like newness of being an entrepreneur, specifically in coaching, where it's something that you likely have a deep passion about, you probably care a lot about, and it's deeply emotional, relational work. Like having resources like this is so necessary. So first and foremost, thank you for making this space.
Well, thank you.
So for me, I was an employee most recently, 2022, and then that role was specifically like carved out for me. So I left my job in higher ed, was self-employed for a couple months. They created a job for me and got me back at the start of the pandemic, which I was like, well, that's cool. And then worked with them for a little bit and then left again in September 2022. So it's been one of those like, on and off again experience, which I am really glad to talk about, because most people don't acknowledge that it's okay to go back to a job. Like it's okay if you get started and, you want to make a little more income or whatever. Like it's not like the big leap book that everybody talks about. You don't have to have this like line in the sand where you took a big leap and quit everything. For me, I viewed my career transformation happening with coaching, because I was able to see that I have a knowledge set and a niche and a specific convergence of skills, education, and experience that other people don't have. And I could then take that skill set that I have and bring it outside of my job. So that was the first step for me, and why coaching was so eye-opening and empowering, because I could keep my job and do what I did just for more people in my own business. So I was employee and entrepreneur for a long time. And then when I made the decision to no longer work as an employee, it was so comfortable. And that's how I knew that it would be the right time for me, is that it wouldn't come with sleepless nights. It wouldn't come with
Mm.
terrifying, panic or crippling debt. It would be something that I built up towards, and I expected it to take a while. And so it did. And it kind of ebbed and flowed. But now that I'm on the other side, and who knows, maybe I'll be an employee again. I technically am of my own business, but you know, if I were to go back to somebody else's job one day, I would know that it was for a good reason. And so
Yeah.
for me, it's more of this transition to being more empowered in how I navigate my career that really makes me feel more like a boss. But it is more from an employee mindset of please, boss, give me a job, to I'm going to carve out what my job is in this world, and I'm going to help as many people as I can. And if that's in one job, great. If that's in a job plus a business plus, that's
Hmm.
great too. I just want to continue sustaining my passion for what I do and navigating the world of work in a way that's empowering. And I know I
Yeah.
didn't give any specifics about what I do yet, so I'd be happy to dive into that if you are interested in that side as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I first off love what you just said. Entrepreneurship is not just one solid path. It's not like you said, making that one leap and then being like, well, this is all I can do forever, right? I'm
Right.
stuck with this. This is it. Because that does lead to burnout, right? And I'm
Mhm.
sure that you've seen that with a lot of newer coaches who kind of have, maybe I'm assuming, imposter syndrome when they haven't made their first sale and maybe they still are in corporate, but they're like, this is what I want to do and I want to put effort into this. And we'll get into all the things of how to balance it, what that actually looks like, how you balanced it. But I do want to hear how you help newer entrepreneurs. I'm sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure mindset's a big part of it. I'm sure actually putting in the hours is a big part of it, and really creating that system of confidently leaving your 9 to 5 or
Mhm.
maybe never. I mean, I interviewed someone on the podcast, the episode is probably up now, where she works full time and shows up online full time. Like it is
Yeah.
possible. So
Yeah.
let's hear about how you help your clients.
Yeah, so my signature program is called Passion to Paychecks, and it's that dynamic of I have a passion for helping people, and I don't know how the fuck to make it into a paycheck. And
Mhm.
I just cannot see the line between I'm giving away my time for free. Either I'm, just trying to build up my confidence and I'm telling everyone that I can coach them for free, or I am giving away resources or courses or whatever, right? You're passionate about it. So you're probably reading about it, talking about it, you're doing the work, but you're not making money yet. And
Mhm.
so what I come in and help folks do is figure out what's the really specific thing that you do differently than other people that makes you money and that your clients are buying from you. Let's actually just get really clear and do some user experience research. Let's map out what your transformation actually looks like so that then you can talk about it with more clarity and then get that consistent client stream that we all really want, right? So that we can leave the air quotes stable jobs and instead step into a stable entrepreneurship life
Mhm.
and really be able to trust and rely on ourselves and our business. So that's the overarching transformation, right? So passion to actually making paychecks. But then the how is definitely mindset. There's so much self love work that goes into this. I don't think anyone doing sales should not be prioritizing self love. So that is what I model and that is what I teach is that it's extremely hard to sell anything, let alone your brain, right? Because coaches, it's your time, it's your
Yeah.
strategy, it's your thinking, and selling your time like that, selling your packages, your programs, knowing that you created this thing from the ground up, that takes a lot of confidence and a lot of clarity. And if you're not really pouring into yourself as often as possible, you're just not going to make the sales. And so you kind of get into this stuck trap of, well, I need to figure out the funnels and the automations and the emails and the lead magnets and the content. And it's yeah, those things are important to do. And we'll do those things too. But first, can we address the fact that you don't necessarily feel worthy? It's maybe let's face that first and figure out why. And
Right.
oftentimes it's what you said, it's imposter syndrome. But unfortunately, that comes from a lack of clarity. What I've seen time and time again is that if you go out there and you try and say, I can life coach anyone to their dream life, that's a really big net you're casting. And that's a lot you're asking yourself to be able to do. But if you go out there and say, I'm a life coach for women that are in their 30s that want to embrace a vegan lifestyle and they don't want to cut out time with their kids, that's way more specific and that's gonna fucking sell. Like that is
Yes.
just better marketing. It is more clear and you can talk about it with way more confidence because that's a very specific problem, right? And
Yeah.
once we know those very specific problems and solutions you want to create for your clients, this is where my master's of education comes in. Like I'm a pedagogy nerd. I'm gonna help you see that like, okay, if that's what we're promising your clients, then let's get really clear on what your offer has to include so that you can go out there and market and sell with integrity, not this, big dreamy lofty goal, but rather like a very specific offer, which then gives people the confidence they need, that casts away that fear of imposter syndrome, because you're not going out there trying to help everybody with everything. And you know
Hmm.
it. And you know you don't have to, because you know that what you do offer is good enough. So it's mindset, self-love through and through to actually do the technical pieces, though, in a way that gets results. Because otherwise, there's a lot of people out there, a lot of business coaches, marketing coaches that won't slow you down enough to do this level of branding and worthiness work, and will just teach you how to market and throw shit out there. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, you're going to burn out again because you're just trying to do all the things. And so instead, in Passion to Paychecks, we really get clear on what is your passion? What is the one thing that, like, if you knew that tomorrow morning you got to wake up and help as many clients as you wanted, 1 or 10, whatever, however you want to structure your day, and they wanted your help with one specific thing, what is that? Like, what is that passion for you? And then let's figure out how to make you money doing it.
Hmm. Right. That's the big next step for
Yeah.
sure. But I love how you say you help your clients slow down because I don't hear that much in the entrepreneurial space. When I started my business 4 years ago, I was very much like hustle, hustle, hustle. And I did get pretty burnt out, but I never stopped. And I think that, I did what I had to do, but I would have loved to hear that in the beginning when I started. Like, slow down, figure out what you want to do, get that clarity, and then you can go after it with more confidence. And so, for people who have not made that first sale, but maybe are talking about it, and you mentioned this, and I hear this all the time where they're like, I'm coaching a friend for free. They're my first client. I'm not making a sale, but I'm coaching them for free.
Right.
How do you get that clarity if you haven't had that first paid client yet?
That's such a good question. And so the concern I would have, right, if someone came to me, and this is always the like red flag that goes up in my head that I'm like, oh shit, we need to talk about your niche, is if they say, oh, well, I talked to these people and these people need this thing, right? And there is a really smart approach to doing user experience research and wanting to be audience driven and community oriented and wanting to co-create offers with your community. Like that is so freaking beautiful. And that is
Mhm.
not realistic for the new coach. And that's what sucks, is that these big name coaches, these big brands, these big ideas are out there and they have the ad budget to get in front of you as a new coach. And they're going to teach you the methods that work for them with their big ass budgets, with their huge thousands of dollars a month of ad budgets. Because the big difference between the two options there is an audience. And if you are brand new as a coach and you're just coaching your family, your friends, your coworkers, you're realizing you've got a skill and you're not really sure how to nurture it, your audience is not specific enough to lean on them as the guidepost for what you should be doing or what you should be marketing or what's going to sell or anything really about your business decisions. Realistically, they are your kind friends and family and people around you that you have exposure to and proximity with. They love you, so they're going to help you. And let's get serious about what you actually want to do. And if
Mhm.
it's that specific conversation, you want to have that all day, every day for the next 3 to 6 months, fucking great. That's so cool that you actually have that clarity in this one person. Like, amazing. And if you don't need to look at any other options, awesome. Double down on that one. Get it? Let's go. But the confidence there is what stops people, right? And you
Mhm.
don't want to just jump in and then regret it later. So, what I would recommend instead is actually, like I said, slowing down and it's going inward. And that's the thing that
Mm.
is like I love the title of your podcast, right? Because employee to boss, like the employee mindset that most of us are coming from says, I need to get permission before I'm allowed to do the work, right? You apply to the job, you get vetted, then you get to do it. Like you're looking for permission. And you don't go write a position description and take it to the company you think is cool and be like, hey, I'm going to come do this work for you. You want to do it? Like you don't pitch it, right?
Yeah.
Instead, though, someone else is writing it. And then you're selling yourself into that role. So the thing that's missing for a lot of new entrepreneurs, though, and new coaches, especially because we can use our skills in so many areas. It's one of those like double-edged swords of like, it's an excellent transferable skill. It's so broad, it can help anyone, but that makes marketing and selling like impossible. So instead, what I recommend and what I hold my clients accountable to doing and teach people how to do through my podcast episodes too is really get clear on who are you? And that's something that, especially if you've been working, if you're an entrepreneur, you probably already do have that hustler spirit. You've probably been in jobs and maybe you had 2, 3, 4 jobs at one time. Like you've got money goals, like, you're probably not becoming an entrepreneur because you don't like working hard. And so realistically, you're looking to please a position that isn't written yet. You're trying to find these people that you need to first define what they look like. You have to make the decisions. And if you really want to be a business owner, that means you got to learn how to define what you want. You set the vision, the business owner sets the vision. And so for me, what that looks like is walking through, who do you like working with the most? And not just, oh, Aunt Nancy because she's friendly, but okay, what about Aunt Nancy? Does she ask specific questions? What's her spiritual background look like? How does she make meaning in her life? How does she make purchasing decisions? How does she make change in her life? What are her values? What are her identities? And what makes her feel seen? Like actually get in the psychological brain of Aunt Sally or whatever, right? Like
Right.
really get super fucking
Like
clear
who
on the
is she?
psychometrics.
Yeah.
And not things like, oh, they're in their 30s, they're women in their 30s. Like that level of data is good if you're doing like paid ads. But if you're trying to connect organically, especially as a new coach, you probably don't have that big budget. Like you need to be psychologically connecting with the people that you want to coach. And the best way to do that is to start by getting clear on who you are and who you were back before you learned whatever you've learned that got you to where you are in your life that makes you feel like you could coach people.
Yeah.
And like whatever that area is, and then start articulating who it actually is that you want in your audience. Who is it that you would want more clients of? And then start building that organically rather than just kind of looking out there and trying to sell coaching. Instead, you're looking for a specific person with a specific problem. And then you can introduce to them that, hey, coaching might help you versus going to the people in your world being like, you have problems, let me help you with my coaching. Like,
Right.
so it's really about going inward and getting clear on what you want your business to look like and your day and your conversations and what kind of impact you want to make. And then from that clarity, then putting that work out there and letting other people connect with you on that level. And then, yeah, I can tell you time and time again, like it fucking works. Like I have a client right now with a Facebook group that she's grown from like 300 to 35,000 in the last 4 months. Like, because when you get to that deep level of who you're here to serve and who you are most connected to and who you want to work with, it just cuts through all the noise of social media and can help you actually do the good work you want to do as a coach.
Podcasting can be game-changing for business growth if you know the right moves to make. That's why I hosted a masterclass called How to Leverage a Podcast for Business Expansion, the 3 moves that you need to know. There are 3 moves that you need to know to have your podcast grow your business. And in this masterclass, we're diving right in. This masterclass is perfect for anyone with a podcast that wants to take it to the next level, or business owners who want to start a podcast that will help them convert listeners to clients. You can access this masterclass immediately by going to espressopodcastproduction.com/masterclass. And I cannot wait for you to learn the 3 moves that you need to know to make your podcast grow your business. I love that. And you're so right. That is one of the first things you do need to figure out is there's that phrase that if you try to help everyone, you help no one.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what you're saying, right? Like you need to know who you can support and how you can support them before you can actually reach them. I always think of like relationship coaches. You can't just message someone and be like, you look single, let's work together. Like, you can't do that. You have to really attract them with your content. And so
Yes.
to do that, you have to actually put out that content. And as you go along in business, I'm sure one of the things that will start working on is like your copywriting and the words that your audience is using. And yes, that's a little more technical, but that does come into the marketing aspect of attracting them, really like putting out to attract. And that is, one of those moments in business where you're like, oh, this is why I hired that coach before, or this is why I'm working with Genesis, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that messaging is such a big part.
Yeah. Absolutely. And when you get it right, it really is something that you can automate and put on repeat. And that's how you start scaling. And
Hmm.
so it's one of those things that people just skip over, or they think they did it, but they didn't really do it, or they didn't really learn why they did it. And just like you were
Yeah.
saying, like they didn't realize that it was the copywriting skills. Like there are literal templates you can just follow. Like there are specific words that you can learn, but it's not the technical pieces that sell. It's not the technical pieces that build community. It's the heart. It's the story. It's the, rather than going and messaging someone, right? Like you were saying, like, hey, you look single, want to fix that. Like, rather, if you were to show up in their feed saying, when I was single,
Hmm.
I felt XYZ, right? Or my clients that are single are going through ABC, and get actually clear on the emotions they're experiencing, the experiences they're having day to day, and show up for them. Like, yeah, that's gonna work way fucking better. Promise you. Like
So
6
much
years of
better.
coaching online, like swear this is what works.
And you'll offend a lot less people that way
Oh my God.
too.
Yes. Seriously. It's like the life coaching in general. Like people don't particularly like hearing or feeling like their entire life is in shambles and they need life coaching.
Yeah.
Right? That in and of itself positions your coaching client as like broken-ish.
Hmm.
Like, oh, my whole life needs fixing. Like, probably not. It's probably just like one or two
Right.
areas.
Right. 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 Exactly. And, going back to what you were saying earlier with being able to feel confident enough in yourself and your business and abilities to go back and forth from corporate to entrepreneur and really just feel comfortable where you're at. I would love to talk about that more too. Seeing online everyone who's making like six, seven, eight figures
Right.
as entrepreneurs, when you're newer and you really don't know what's possible, your goal is probably going to be pretty high, right? Your goal is probably
Mhm.
going to be like, I'm not successful unless I make this number.
Right.
So I would love to talk about that and really just like the income part of entrepreneurship, especially when you are newer.
Absolutely. This makes me think of I hosted a summit in January. This was the first summit online with, I think I had like 11 speakers. It was so freaking cool. They were a bunch of folks from my program, Passion to Paychecks. And in it, I gave a talk that was my first 100K year and helping people plan their first 100K year. And what I walked through, and I'm actually pulling it up because I'm going to tell you guys like the numbers here. I showed a screenshot of my actual income for the last 6 years as an entrepreneur, like just money for my business. And for the first 1, 2, 3, 4 years, I didn't break 50K. And that was okay for me because I had other income at the time. I had other income from a job. I had other income from my partner. And there was things that made it possible for me to spend a while just kind of learning entrepreneurship. I wasn't trying to replace my income that year because I was still holding on to my jobs. I was still making other commitments. My time was not fully ready and I didn't trust myself or my business yet. And that was fine. But God, I felt like shit. Those years, I felt so bad. I wanted to make so much more money. But realistically, if I had been more serious about, was I actually ready to leave my job yet? Did I really trust that I was going to show up for myself and my business goals and my community and my clients and actually do all the scary pitching and hard stuff. And no, not really. I wasn't really ready for that just yet. And then once I crossed that 50K threshold and was like, oh shit, like I do know how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And then it became way more possible. And then I hit 100K the next year. And so it's like that growth really came from my commitment to trust myself. And the way that I think about self-trust these days is checking in on my emotional state in every moment and trusting that I'm doing the best I can to advocate for what this meat sack called a body is trying to communicate to me through weird ass electrons that fire through a mushy sack of brain. Like, I'm doing my best every step of the way. And so if, one day I get up and I really don't want to make content, I'm not gonna,
Mm-hmm.
because I can trust that next week something's going to change in my hormones and I'm going to wake up feeling hot and I'm going to want to record 5 videos and that's going to be fine. But
Mm-hmm.
that comes from self-trust, right? That comes from proving to myself for years that I wasn't going to give up on my dream. I had months where I had to not work because of surgery. Like, I had open fucking surgery. Like, yeah, I'm not going to put out reels that month and I'm not going to
Right.
expect, right? Like, I'm not going to expect that my income's going to be the same. But if I had a whole team that was pumping out my reels and that could repurpose my content, like, yeah, that would look different.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not who we should be comparing ourselves to, if we have to compare ourselves at all. Like, the real life stories of entrepreneurs isn't overnight success. And if that's what you're dreaming for and planning for, like, you're probably going to burn out and be really disappointed in yourself for no fucking reason. It's the same thing as everyone thinking that the thin ideal matters and that we should be pursuing it. Like, no, this is bullshit marketing. Like, it's not real. The real lived experience of most entrepreneurs is a little bit of a rocky, confusing, bumpy start, and then like some commitment, questions, double downing, and figuring shit out, and then kind of restarting, and then flying. Like, but if you didn't know that that's how it's gonna go, it could feel really bad. So
Yeah.
hopefully that helps just kind of normalize, the income, but also the dynamic of confidence coming with time.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing the income that you made because I think that is a conversation that a lot more people should be having.
Yeah.
I keep seeing reels that's like, I made 50K this month or
Yeah.
whatever it is. And I'm like, what are you doing with that money? Investing it back into your content, probably. That doesn't mean your income is 50K, you know?
No, or
You're,
paying off that ad bill, or,
yeah,
like maybe they spent 40K in ads. Like, we don't
exactly.
know.
You never know. And so I appreciate your transparency and
Mhm.
I really understand like why your clients would come to you because you are going to be honest with them and say, this is probably what you can expect, maybe
Yeah.
more, maybe less, but just like listen to yourself. It's not like one linear path for every single entrepreneur.
Right.
And it's always going to be rocky. I think it always is, especially when you do have to rely on yourself, like you're saying. There's times when I wake up and I'm like, there is no way I'm getting on a call today. Like, or there is no way I am getting on
Me
camera.
before our podcast being like, wait, you wanted to film this? Give me 2 minutes to fix my hair. Like, that is so real as an online entrepreneur. Like, you never know what you're gonna get
Right.
up to in a day.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
So
fun.
I really appreciate the transparency that you're showing. And I'm curious, have you always been this accepting of, business and really trusting yourself, or is this something that you've had to really work towards, and how have you got to where you are?
Hmm. Thanks. That's a really interesting question. I think that I developed a strong, somewhat unhealthy self-reliance coping skill as a kid.
Hmm.
I went through a lot of abuse as a child, and there was years where I didn't get a say over anything in my world, and so my brain became my favorite place to hang out. And so I decided to make it a really lovely place to hang out and be nice to myself and figure that out pretty early, that like, oh, terrible things can be happening around and to me, and I can still feel safe because my brain
Hmm.
is more powerful than anything around me. And that kind of gave me an unhealthy like leaning on myself. It shows up in my life as, hyper independence, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs understand that. And it also has taught me that like I can learn anything I want to. And as an entrepreneur, like if you really can figure that out, if you figure out how to learn best for you, yeah, you will also figure out how to have that confidence in business and yourself. But it really comes from nurturing that and practicing all the time. And so for me, I started as a career coach, and it was self-love career coaching. And so for that work, it was all about work-life balance, and self-love was the method that I helped people get there through. And so I actually have a journal on Amazon now. I have a daily committed self-love habits journal that I personally do, that I also ask all my one-on-one clients to do with me daily. And it is a commitment to myself that I keep as many days as I can.
Yeah.
Let's be real. I'm going to say every day is the goal, but like it's like I get like an A, like a 90%, I'd say.
Yeah.
Like I'm scraping in there. But that commitment to myself of doing mindfulness meditation, of doing gratitudes, of doing self-forgiveness, of figuring out my daily priorities, and then setting forth with that, I think is how I recommit to it. Because even if you haven't been nurturing your self-love or your self-trust or like any of these things right now, the first step would be just start today. Just take 2 minutes and think about what you really want the rest of this day. Whenever you're listening to this podcast, like literally do it right now. Stop and consider how you want the rest of your day to go. And then just start doing that more often. Like just start being more intentional and giving yourself what you want, and then see how that feels. And then do it bigger and bigger and communicate with more and more people about it, and really hold your vision of what you want your future to look like, and give it weight, give it merit, socialize it, tell people about it, and then build it. Like it really comes from practice.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. I really, really appreciate that. What is your journal called so we can all find it?
Yeah, it's the SYP journal, and it's like bright yellow. Either look up Sustain Your Passion Journal, or SYP is the shorthand for it. It's the
I'll
same
put
name
it.
as my podcast, Sustain Your Passion.
Perfect. I'll put that in the show notes. But that's so
Awesome.
interesting. And really, when you were saying that, I was thinking, like, how do I want the rest of my day to go? I want to get out in the sun and finish my client work, and then just like I'm going to a baseball game tonight and just have fun and not have to think about my business. That's really,
Yes, that's
that's really my goal.
amazing. I love that clarity, because I bet knowing that you get to go be out in the sun and the baseball game and all that, like you're going to get your work done so fast.
Yeah.
And you're either going to decide this shit can wait till Monday, right? Because that's
Probably.
the perks of being the fucking boss, is you get to
Yes.
decide when the Friday stops, or you're going to just fly through your work because you're motivated and your energy is high because you're
Hmm.
excited about what's coming next. Like when we focus on getting our energy cleared and like our clarity strong so that we can be more courageous and take action and make decisions. Oh my God, life is so much better.
It really is. So tell us about your podcast and how you use it for your business. So I'm a podcast manager and I just love talking about podcasting, especially as it relates to business marketing. So
Love it.
tell us about your podcast, where we can find it, and how it helps you in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So my podcast is called Sustain Your Passion. It's available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all the other like big name podcast playing softwares. You can also go to my website, jenesisrose.com/podcast, if you want to see other resources that are related to it. But I started my podcast January of 2023, so not that long ago. And I wanted to for so long. It was a dream on every dream board I made for the last like 10 years, I swear. And so finally got it started. I hired someone to help me get it started because I didn't want to deal with the clicking of the connectings and the whatevers. And I figured, you know what? It's worth it to me, even if this doesn't add to the business. Like, this is a hobby I want to cultivate. And so let's do that. Like, I got clear that I wanted to do it. And so I got help, got it all set up. And then for me, the way that I use it in my business is twofold. So the first is that I put out a bunch of content. Like, I am fully committed to the fact that if you wanted to learn everything I teach my clients, you could through my free content. I am deeply committed to the hard worker that is going to take it slow and learn all the free shit. Like I was that girl. And so I am putting out as much free content as I can because that is part of me giving back to my community and for those that can't afford to work with me yet. So there is shit tons of business development education available on my podcast. And from there, though, I also embed my podcast into my offers. So you get, this is the podcast episode and here's some more. And then as I go through my different offers, if clients are asking questions, like recently I was talking with a client about how to pick the name of your coaching program. And I was like, I could do a podcast on that and then link it into my offers. And so it's both, for clients that, are free in the community right now, I'm putting it out as marketing content. Then also I leverage it as a space to help me actually develop and improve my paid offers. And then in terms of funnel space, I think of my podcast as operating in the mid tier of a sales funnel. So if we think of a 3-part funnel of strangers, engagers, and buyers, or know, like, trust, or any other version you've heard of that 3-step funnel. Essentially for me, I use social media as where I meet people. I invite them to have a conversation with me by listening to my podcast. And on my podcast is where they're almost always invited, if I remember, because sometimes I forget, then to check out my webinar or learn about working with me in my group program, Passion to Paychecks.
Very cool. I love the way that you structure that and how you really started it. And that's exactly the right reason to start it, just to have conversations.
Yeah.
And then you found these places that it fits into your business really well. And that's very smart that you can use it on both ends of attracting people to your network and then also expanding on your paid offers. I think that that is amazing and a great way to really maximize the education aspect of podcasting.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
Once I figured out that I could embed my podcast into my offers, I was like, oh my God, this is so great. It's so
totally.
much easier.
Totally, definitely. Just like you already created it, why not use it as much as you can, right?
Yeah. People may not scroll back to episode 7,
Mhm.
now that I'm at 58 or whatever. So let me just make sure they know that this one's important.
Yeah, yeah. So Genesis, tell us a little bit about, I know you mentioned your offers before, but I would love to hear exactly who you work with and how you help them and then where we can find you.
Perfect. Yeah. So I work with new coaches that are ready to go from passion, I want to help everyone, to paychecks. I actually can leave my full-time job if I wanted. And they have clarity on what they do and they can show up and actually confidently market themselves so that they can close sales. So really, if you're in that, I've never made a dollar before, or I'm trying to get to consistent 10K months, you're in that space of newer business, and you don't quite have a system worked out and you feel a little nervous every time somebody is like, tell me about your coaching business, you're going to like my work. You're going to like the Sustain Your Passion podcast, which you can find on any podcast app that you listen to your favorite podcasts on. You might also enjoy my work that I share on Instagram or Facebook. You can find me at Jenesis Rose. And you also might really enjoy Passion to Paychecks, which is my signature program where I help anybody that identifies as a coach, an educator, a consultant, a trainer, somebody that wants to help someone go from one place to another. And it's really that brain work, the service work, the transformation work. And I would help you get clear on what your niche is, not just, the template, but really the psychometric side of who is that person you're helping and what specifically are you going to do with them in your offer so that you can create $1,000 or more offer that you can confidently sell on repeat. So if that sounds like where you're at and you're ready to have consistent sales, come check out Passion to Paychecks and a bit more of my work around sustaining your passion and actually reaching your biggest business goals without burning out.
Awesome. I'll put all of those in the show notes. And
Cool.
Genesis, the last question I ask all of my guests to wrap up our conversation is I would love it if you could challenge the audience with 3 action steps that they can take this week to move forward in their business or their life.
I love that. So I'm going to give you an activity that I share with my clients sometimes. So step 1 is going to be getting clear on who exactly you want to help. So just picture them in your head, right? Whether this is a past client and you're thinking about them, whether it's past version of yourself, your best friend you wish would hire you, whoever, ideally your ideal client avatar that you've, done work on, but just think about who you want to help, right? That's step 1. Get clear on who they are, picture them in your head, kind of imagine them in the space with you. And then step 2, I want you to consider, what do they need to hear from you today? And don't challenge anything that comes up. Just fucking write it down. Just record it. Just don't hold back is what I mean. Just say what you need to say to them. So that's step 2. And from there, I would then challenge you to go put it out into the world. Whether that's that you write an email, so you take your original writing from this activity and you go write an email to your list, or you want to go record what you said and then make it into an Instagram reel or a TikTok, or you want to send it to one of your clients and invite them to work with you on a new offer. Like, I don't care what you do with that copy, but if you want to get closer to advancing your business, you really need more clarity. That's that first step. You need a bit more courage. That's sharing it, right? And then ultimately, that's how you get confidence, is you go out and you do the shit. So that's the 3-part challenge I would give to your listeners.
I love those. Those are great. And I'll put also those in the show notes for anyone who wants to take action on that. But Jenesis, thank you so much for joining me on this conversation. I have loved your energy and just all the advice that you've really shared. It made me feel very open and warm and comfortable. So I really appreciate everything that you shared today.
Awesome. Thank you. And likewise, it's been a great conversation. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Employee to Boss podcast. If you made it to the end of this episode, I hope that you implement the actionable steps from this week's experts so you can get started with your business today. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the Employee to Boss podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. It helps more than you could ever imagine. Remember, a little progress each day leads to big results. We come out with a new episode every Tuesday. To access our show notes, transcripts, and courses, please check out espressopodcastproduction.com.